You're listening to Chatcast with your host, Tracee Dunblazier, the award-winning podcast that features interviews with luminaries of the mind-body-spirit marketplace. You'll hear from book authors and publishers, store owners and product creators, filmmakers, musicians, and many more, who'll all share insight and wisdom to help open your eyes to new creative possibilities. If you fancy yourself as a visionary thinker, then Chatcast is the place for you. Now, here's your host, spiritual empath, shaman, and best-selling author, Tracee Dunblazier.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. It's so good that you are here with us today on Chatcast. I have a very special guest. Her name is Renee Baribeau. She's known as the Practical Shaman. She is an award-winning Hay House author of a book called The Winds of Spirit, an Ancient Wisdom Tools for Navigating Relationships, Health, and the Divine. Renee is also renowned for bridging ancient wisdom with modern tools for personal and collective transformation. She is also the creator of the Windwalker's Wisdom Oracle, a 64-card deck and guidebook, and as the co-host of the acclaimed podcast, The Shaman's Cave, with Sandra Ingerman, Renee shares profound rituals and tools for addressing humanity's most pressing challenges and fostering personal growth and collective healing. Hi, it's 3-2, wanting you to leave. Hello.
It's so nice to be here with you today, Tracee.
Yes, indeed. So good to see you. Now, you're broadcasting from up north today.
I am. I'm up on Whidbey Island, a very special island in the Pacific Northwest, and I live in a tree house, so I'm up with the trees and the wind, so it's perfect.
Oh my God, that is like a life dream fantasy come true. to live in your most favorite place with your most favorite elements. That's pretty fantastic.
It is. I get to live in two wonderful spots. One is the desert that dries you out, and then
Yes.
the wet and wild up here that fills you back up.
Yes. So you've been an author and an award-winning author of books and decks, many different things. I know for many, many years. I know you do workshops because I've sat with you for a few of them. I've really enjoyed them. But how did you get your start? How did you, like as a business person, how did you become the Practical Shaman?
As a business person, let's go back to about the time that I was 5 or 6. When somehow I knew that I was going to need money to exchange things, and I was very industrious, and I would shovel snow, and I would sell Girl Scout cookies to go to camp. So I understood the idea of trading my work for services.
Right.
And then when I was in my late 20s, I started cooking and I became a chef, and I soon opened my own restaurant and realized the restaurant was like a boat in the sea you poured your money into. And I went into the catering, which supported that. And then at the same time, I was having like a spiritual awakening.
Right.
And that started to shift everything. And that got me to the West Coast. And then here I am on the West Coast and still a businesswoman.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And at what point did you choose the Practical Shaman as your angle, as your focus, or as your tagline, if you will?
Very early. I was a very early adopter on the web, the web stuff. I had a Desert Holistic Network healing network. So I brought healers together way back in the early 2000s before other people were doing it. And and at the same time, I bought the name The Practical Shaman. And thinking back now, the Practical Shaman is very redundant. Shamans are very practical. So it's almost like the practical here. But it was okay because it was a good name. And at one point, a business coach wanted me to change it to the Executive Shaman because I was mostly working with executives.
Right.
And they're like, yeah, no, I'm kind of cool with this one. And I stuck to it.
So tell me a little more about the work that you do. And like today, what is your work day like?
So the workday, I still have a full-time job. I'm the brand and marketing manager at a behavioral healthcare organization.
Okay.
And that it's been a really interesting transition to watch it over the 12 years, because when I started, and I'd start, blowing my wind whistle at the treatment center, they're like, no, no, that's not evidence-based, Renee, you can't do that.
Right.
And so I stayed in the business long enough to see them to start to take our evidence of our healing work and bring it in full circle. And
Right.
so I have that day job. And
Mm-hmm.
then one time I'm there like, well, where am I ever going to write a book? And it was one of like a really big social media person said, well, you just need to get up a little earlier, Renee. So I started getting up from 5 to 8 to write in the morning.
Okay.
And so I have my writing career, I have the other career, and then I also teach. I have a class going on right now, and I'm teaching classes for the Psychic College in London, and I've just
Yeah.
my teaching business is there as well.
Nice. Yeah, that is many avenues for you to do your work. How do you uh, do you have a team that helps you with all of the different business aspects, like your marketing, your all of your web stuff, or are you pretty much a hands-on person?
This year, I've taken a different approach over, like, clearly because of my love for social media and for web. I learned to build websites, and that really
Right.
early in when webs were being developed. But that
Hmm.
doesn't mean just because you can do it, you're supposed to do it.
Right.
This year I've hired a graphic designer to work with me to help rebrand the Practical Shaman.
Hmm.
And it's been really instrumental, because what I find myself doing is I'll go into Canva. I don't know if you all know Canva, but
Yeah.
it's like a design platform which has really changed the game for what people could
Right.
create from, of course I went to college and I have the all the Adobe under my background too, but I know a little bit too much for my own good. So
Right.
now I'll go into Canva and create a design of what I'm thinking, and I'll go to the graphic guy, say, "Okay, fix it." And I walk away, and he makes these beautiful designs for me, and I'm like
Nice.
very happy with that.
That is amazing. I forgot to, there we go. Yeah, it's I think as a business person and as an independent business person, it's really important to know all the aspects of your business, but then you really do have to relinquish them to other people for whom they've chosen that as their profession.
I totally agree. In
You
fact,
know?
like, I have a web guy who, certain times I could go in and easily fix something myself, and I don't do it anymore. I'm there like,
Right.
Hassan, you do that.
Exactly. It's very interesting too, because a lot of times I think that we don't really recognize where the hours in the day go. You might
Exactly.
start a little design, but then that has just sucked up about an hour and a half of your time because you've been so engrossed in it. And so when you actually surrender those things to other people who and that buys you all of this time where you can do other things.
Absolutely. I was designing a website with my little team for somebody. And when it came down to the nitty gritty of it, I was like in there rewriting content. And I
Hmm.
spent 27 hours one weekend doing it, and I'm there like, yeah, no,
Wow.
because you just when you really start to look at how much time that eats away from, I could be teaching, I could be marketing my own business, I could be
Right.
doing all of these other things. And I do have an assistant who's an apprentice who's now an assistant who's, helping co-facilitate one of my classes.
Right.
And I'm letting her, you communicate with the people every week. You
Right.
take care of these things. And so then I can show up fresh to teach.
Exactly. Exactly. So, share if you have. Do you have your book handy and your deck handy? So I've got your deck right here. Well, just so people can really see. Um,
I know, I'm so bad. I don't this is Winds of Spirit. This is the Hay House book. This
okay,
is like,
turn it around. Turn it the other.
oh, can you?
No, 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 no. It's upside down. There we go.
Oh, now you can see it?
Oh no, no. I'm sorry. I was wrong. It was now. There we go. it's
Probably
just fascinating
backwards
to me.
on the mirror screen.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so it's Winds of
Winds
Spirit.
of Spirit. It's like the Bible of the wind. And
Uh-huh.
before religion separated us into Christians and Muslims, and all of the people were nature believers, and they
Right,
walked with the wind. And Holy Spirit's a wind, Ruach is a wind, Nirvana is a no wind, Om is the sound of the wind passing between things. It's wind,
right.
and we need the wind right now. I also have another book that I don't have handy that I just finished this year called A Pilgrim's Guide to Walking Wisdom 1111 Insights.
Oh, wow.
Great little book. Uh, 11 great insights for living your life that became really clear to me when I was walking the Camino last year. And there's
Right,
this whole story about some symbols and some people and some things that showed up that got that book between this book. And I told you this morning, I'm writing a new book. I'm
right.
not at liberty to announce the publisher yet, but it's going to be coming out in 2026.
Nice. That and congratulations on that. That's amazing, and I really really love your content. So, would you like to pull a few cards for us, or share one of your 11 insights?
So my 11 insights are really spectacular. It's like very simple. Like I was walking along on the Camino and I was so exhausted one day, and all of a sudden I started out of the blue singing, I've been working on the railroad all the live long. And the woman walking with me that day, she started singing too. And we
Right,
sang this song like over and over for the last quarter of a mile. That was so hard to get to the hotel. And then I found myself, just these little insights, like singing a song,
mm-hmm.
just doing it, or
Yes,
just like there. But I realized there were 11 insights that I was using to live my life,
mm-hmm.
and how it even came about, because the book I'm writing next, The Practical Shaman, is, it's another big book like the Wind book. But this
Right,
other book came about because this man that I had met in shaman school in the early 2000s wrote to me and said, "Hey, I can't walk. Would you walk for me?" And I had no idea how I was going to walk for him.
right,
Every day I'd get out before I'd start walking, because once you start walking, you're tired. I
right,
would do these insights from the trail. And so I thought, like, well, these are very insightful. I should write them down. And so
right.
I ended up writing a whole little book, and I'm there like, well, I've never heard back from Don about how he liked my insights.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it turns out that Don died the first day I started to walk.
Oh my goodness.
But yet he inspired this whole book.
Right.
And so I dedicated the book to Don. It's a really amazing book. I really highly recommend it.
Mm-hmm.
And the 1111 insights kept showing up all the time, 1111, 1111. And so definitely there. Now the Windwalker wisdom. Now, you people who are doing business, because we're kind of wanting this as well.
Right.
Last fall, I had this idea I was going to write a book, and also the oracle cards that I'd been working on for a
Right.
decade. That just
Wow.
finally, well, I had tried artist after artist after artist. You know how that
Okay.
goes.
I do. I do. And to find a good partnership is it's a powerful thing for sure.
And so I went to this astrologer. I said, I have two products. Out of the blue, I have got a book, A Pilgrim's Guide to Walking Wisdom, and the Windwalker's Wisdom Oracle.
Hmm.
The book is ready. Should I bring it out in November? And he's looking at my astrology, because, use all your tools.
Right.
Use your human design, use your astrology. You've got to
Yep,
use
yep.
all the tools that are available. And
Right.
he looks at it, he goes, no, that book needs to come out in February, which it ended up coming out at the Conscious Life Expo where we met.
Okay.
And he said, but I do see you coming out with a product in November. And it was the Windwalker's Wisdom Oracle, which put
Okay.
me under the gun to get it done
Yeah.
quickly. And
Yes.
so I got to work, and it came out in November. Came out like right before Christmas, sold 500 like right off the bat.
Yeah.
And he was so right that it was the right product to come out first.
Yeah.
So The Windwalker Wisdom Oracle, the first book, Winds of Spirit, has 32 gods and goddesses, all
Okay.
in history. All none of them are made up. And when I started to do this book, 32 more showed up.
Wow, interesting.
It was fascinating because some of them should have shown up the first time and they didn't.
That's one of the things that I find so fascinating there's one thing to create a product, but it is always just this what's the word I want? This like a thundering explosion of insight, and like all, within usually a fairly short period of time, where you're bringing in information and having all of these experiences one after the other. And it may, there isn't a lot of mundane life when you're actually working on something, because like I said, all this content is coming through and it's
Mhm.
so powerful. So that's amazing.
I totally agree with that. I always, my editor warned me that when you start to write a book, the book starts to write you. And
Yes.
even after I got the book notice of the book contract, I had this big dream,
Yes.
like a shaman dream, which I hadn't had. Although for the A Pilgrim's Guide to Walking Wisdom, a bear showed up the first night I was in Portugal.
Mm,
A bear showed up about a month after I was home writing the book in my dreams. And when I
right.
was going back to look, a bear had shown up 2 months before I'd walked the Camino. And I hadn't recognized it until I started to put it all together. Because if you're creating a product or a project, you're
Right.
probably getting signs, and
Right.
write them down, because you don't even know if they're for now or for 10 years from now. They're like, oh,
Exactly.
that's why the shaman told me my name meant the sound between passing things. The wind,
Yes.
I didn't know. Who
Right.
knew? You just tack it away for later.
Exactly. Yes.
So I'd love to pull a couple cards for this group right here.
Good.
Three cards, like a little past, present, and future for where we're at.
Okay, that would be great.
Okay. This is always a surprise. I did with a friend who was reading astrology a couple of weeks ago on YouTube. She would do the astrology reading, and then I'd pull the card for each
Uh-huh.
sign.
Right.
And it was fascinating how the overlay worked so well.
Yeah. I love using multiple decks together at the same time to bring out the same message, because it always gives you such layered, nuanced information.
Exactly. And sometimes, like, you're there like, well, the wind, Renee, the wind. But the wind is the force of life. The wind, when you are born, your wind of spirit comes into
Right.
you, and it's everything.
Yeah.
When you die, it goes. And
Right.
so when you start to look at it this way,
Yeah.
then you're way better off. But I'd like to, before I read it, can I just play the wind whistle for everyone?
Yeah, please.
All right. So the wind whistle is a tool that we use in the wind work, and there's all kinds of them. But this one has a jaguar face. It's made by a woman in Chile. They're all handmade by artisans in Mexico or Chile, and
Hmm.
they're all different. Everyone sounds different. But what we do is we call to the wind. So I'm just going to invite the wind in for this reading that we're going to do.
Great. Yeah.
Could you feel the move from the
And
mundane to the mystical?
yes,
It's like
it's pretty
it
spectacular.
moves right on out of time really quickly. So if you
Hmm.
don't have a wind whistle, you can always use your finger and just blow. It's it's that compression of your expulsion of your air, like a laughter,
Uh-huh.
that they use in some traditions. to get you inspired, because really enlightenment means enlighten up. So
Yes.
any way we can enlighten
Yes.
up, the better.
Yes.
So this is the past card, and this is
Okay.
Yalana, the Yaruk wind from Turkey. And she's about patience, and it's about pause, reflect, and accept. Now, if you think about where we've been as a collective, we've really had to exercise our patience. And no
Yeah.
matter where you are on the spectrum of this world, the
Mhm.
world is turning over. And the Quechua people called this a pachacuti, a turning over of the world.
Mhm.
In some of the Mayan traditions, we talk about a time where the world goes dark. And it's this time of really uncertainty and not knowing and not being able to trust anything. So this idea of how do we have patience in this not knowing, this uncertain time, is really what's up for us right now. And it's really surprising that, or not, that this wind, Yalana, comes in. She's a wind mother. And we're moving into what hopefully is a more of the feminine, the sacred feminine archetype for the next round. Now, this
Right.
could take hundreds of years. We don't really know how long it's going to take, but we
Right.
definitely need patience. And I've been taught patience when I had my farm to table restaurant 20 years before it was time. And then
Right.
when the spirit came out, and I thought, like, well, to my guides, now, isn't that means it's on time now? Hay House is
Right.
publishing it. It's Otis said, no, no, no. We've been teaching you patience all these years.
Right.
Patience, my dear. 6 billion years. What do you think? If you get 100-year lifetime, that's nothing.
Yeah.
So if you
Yeah.
think about it in terms of this, but for the for in Turkey, when the Muslims came into Turkey, the wind believers were moved out, and so
Mm.
it's very hard to find ideas of the Yalana in the Turkish culture. A friend of mine
Okay.
was even connected and couldn't find any of the symbols from before before this time in religion. But if
Mhm.
you think about that, if you're traveling through the desert and a windstorm comes up, what
Mhm.
do? You hunker down. You wait
Right.
until the windstorm passes, and
Right.
then you find your way. And believe it or not, they always found their way through the deserts.
Right.
And so we're in that kind of a desert energy right now in the world. Just know that what's being called for is for you to have patience.
Okay.
That's been in the past.
Okay.
But in the
Interesting.
present, you need courage.
Yeah, you do.
So, Madame Fang Popo, she's one of my favorite wind goddesses. As you can see, I
Uh-huh.
really got her
Beautiful.
with a lot of character and stuff.
Yeah.
She rides on the back of a tiger, and
Mhm.
that's a wind bag in her hand, because
Okay.
wind was carried in sacks. If you look,
That's
like
interesting.
Vayu carries his wind in a sack, everyone carries their wind in a bag or in a cave. Um, but that the wind was stored up for other use. And so in the Wind Clan, we make wind knots to store our power in knots,
Mhm.
which was an old tradition when people used to go to the wind witches for sailors' knots. And so Feng Popo, I work with her a lot for to come down to the collective, and I
Mhm.
have my students write their biggest fears on the wind,
Mhm.
come down on their tiger and collect them up with her wind bag and take them out past the furthest galaxy, transmute them with love and light, and and dissolve them. So if
Right.
you're having fears right now, call upon the wind
Okay.
to dissolve them for you.
Okay. Good.
Okay?
Mhm.
Because fear doesn't go anywhere unless you face it.
Right. And courage is not the absence of fear, it is the process of walking through the fear.
Right.
Right.
It's like going through it no matter what, and
Exactly.
and doing it despite the fear.
Right.
And
Exactly.
so for the future
Hmm.
is Boreas, the north wind. Now the story of Boreas supposedly lives beyond the furthest mountain.
Okay.
And Boreas is in the way that I've written this,
Mhm.
is the the wind of spirit, community, and service.
Right.
So the way to get through this time of you've been sitting patiently waiting, now you need to show your courage, because our spirit is going to win here.
Mm-hmm.
The spiritual warriors are hopefully the ones that are going to carry us forward, and remember that we're spiritual beings first,
Mm-hmm.
and that we're here. We all breathe the same wind. The same wind that I breathe out today. So if it's hate, it's going to go around the world in 3 short days. And
Right.
if it's love, it's going to go around the world in those same 3 short days. So what are you breathing into the
Mm-hmm.
energy of the universe? And so the way we know if we're being supported spiritually is that we have the community buy-in and support. So for you business owners out there, a lot of people say, well, I don't want to work. I don't want to work a day job. I want to be a psychic. Okay,
Right.
well, how's the community showing up to support that for you?
Right.
Whereas I knew that I wanted a bigger retirement check. So I
Right.
went back to corporate America, where I knew that if I put in another few years, that I would have some security on the other side to
Right.
be most of service to the wind, because
Right.
the wind doesn't care. You
Yeah.
tell the wind you need some money, and it was like, is that a nickel, Renee, or is that $1 million?
Right.
So
Exactly.
how is the community showing up to support you? Now,
Mm-hmm.
it's funny for me, when I took the money out of the equation, the community showed up a whole lot more. Hey,
Yeah.
how showed up to publish the book. A new publisher showed up to publish the next book. And
Yeah.
because I had the income, I was able to publish the Windwalker Wisdom Oracle and a
Right.
Pilgrim's Guide to Walking Wisdom,
Right.
and market them, because you might want to write a book, but Tracee knows and I know that the marketing a book is not an inexpensive proposition.
No, it is not. It's
Right.
you have it's I call it a labor of love, because once it's a product, to many people it's just a product.
Right.
It's another of the millions of books on the market. So how do you differentiate yours? This is my cat, just FYI. She's been uh,
Hi.
experiencing
That's funny.
wind shifts as we've been talking. Um, but yeah, you really have to. It's a whole separate job, which can be a full-time job. The interesting thing when you talk about being in corporate America, I really feel like it's so important to be who you are in systems that so desperately need the change, right? And
Hmm.
just your presence, you know, uh, in that system creates a space for that change.
Absolutely. I think that I talk about a lot of times in my work about that we navigate from our own wheelhouse.
Right.
And so in a company, you're bringing your wheelhouse into that. And so because of who I am and how I am, as you can imagine, I ruffle feathers,
Yeah.
and because I'm the wind, and I bring in and I disrupt.
Yeah.
So, I think that I kind of could be like the moral compass of the companies that I come into, because I don't back down.
Right.
I have learned over the years working in corporate America how to get along better with people, because
Right.
that's a job where especially when you're the wind, you could blow people over.
Right.
Or if you can stay within the system, you can really start to execute change. Like
Yeah.
when I was at a treatment center and they said, well, you can't bring your wind whistle to work because it's not evidence based. Well,
Yeah.
then one weekend, this woman died and left an empty desk in the middle of our office, and everybody was torn apart on Monday. They didn't know what to do.
Right.
And I'm there like, hey, let's have a ceremony in the courtyard on Wednesday.
Right.
75 employees, all of the people in treatment showed up, and there's the CEO looking out the door.
Yeah.
And I look up and I said, here's your evidence.
Exactly. Got 75 people right here.
Afterwards,
Absolutely.
people came up and said thank you.
Yeah,
It was really painful to walk by that empty desk and not have any closure.
absolutely. And I think this whole illusion of evidence is that people just don't, like, people in positions of power, they don't want to be wrong. They don't want to be sued. They don't want something that's going to cause them disruption, right? So they may or may not believe, but they can't admit that they believe, or they can't support the belief, and allow for the space for evidence to be revealed, because it hasn't been signed off on whatever their beacons of truth are.
Exactly. And he actually, him and I would sit down when I was writing the book, when I was working there, him and I would sit down and talk for hours about the evidence in my book,
Hmm.
because he really believed it and he'd had similar experiences. And
Yes.
yet, as a PhD clinical guy,
Right.
he had to hold the bar there. But,
Yeah.
but over the 10, 12 years that I've been there, that's been changing. I just did a behavioral healthcare conference at UCLA, and
Yes, I love
we
that
had
one. I've been once.
we had constellation therapy there with a MD, and we had somebody else, Mari Smith, who's really huge in social media, talking about bullying. I mean, so
Yes.
it's like the evidence is now starting to show up
Yeah.
because so many more people have opened up their eyes and their ears to
Right.
these energy systems.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, that's wonderful. That is such good work, and it's so. I in the beginning of my career, I really wanted to interface with city and county programs, and I was able to do a few of them, um, but it was only because they didn't really know what I was doing. You know what I mean? And I could never be the face of it, because I did not qualify for them, and especially at that time. So that's such an important place to be doing this work. It's powerful. So thank you for that.
Well, I had a friend who did all of the events for Apple. And before the board meeting, she'd go in and she'd smudge the space,
Yep.
and the guy would be walking by, one of the, vice presidents, and he said, like, what are you doing? She goes, do you really want to know? And he's there like, no, no, don't tell
Right.
me. But the meetings always go better after you've been in here doing this.
Right. Exactly. There is a place for well, it's really for respect, and to do the practice or the ceremony that elicits our own respect, which then commands a whole other level of respect from those outside of us. And it's important, and it's amazing. So I love all of your work. Where can people find? I've got your website right here, thepracticalshaman.com. But tell us a little more, if you have other platforms that you want people to reach out. Can they find your podcast and all your books on your site?
Yeah, everything's linked from my site. We have a evergreen teaching site called windwork.org, where you can, see the offerings and take them at your leisure. The Shaman's Cave is linked from both my site and shamanstv.com.
Right.
Sandra, it's been a real blessing. Sandra and I have been sitting together for 7 years.
Wow.
And if you know Sandra Ingerman, she's one of the most well-respected shamanic practitioners, that came from the United States.
Right.
And she's real substantial. And so the fact that we sit together, it's like we speak for like an hour before we ever hit the podcast record button. So it's like
Right.
having our own little coffee clatch between us. And
Yes.
we talk about whatever's going on in our worlds that seems
Mhm.
to be reflected out. And after 7 years, we've created a lot of podcasts.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'll have to check it out. I love Sandra Ingerman, and I love your work. So I bet you guys are dynamite together.
Yeah, she's the earth and I'm the wind. And so
Yeah.
we kind of keep each other going.
Right. That's wonderful. Well, so again, thank you so much for all that you do, for being with me here today, and sharing a little bit of your insight on how you work and how you became the practical shaman. So any other thoughts for you before we wind down?
No, I'm glad. Thank you. It's really nice to be sitting here with you and sharing the space, and for all the listeners at home. I hope to see you over. I also have the Wind Clan over on Facebook, so you can join us there if you want to, if you're curious to know more about the wind.
Okay. The Wind, and is it at the Wind Clan?
It's just the
The
Wind
Wind
Clan.
Clan. Okay.
Yeah, you should be able to find it. It's a private group so people can share privately, but you can. It's not a hidden group.
Okay. Well, wonderful. Oh, here we go. Thanks for the very informational and interesting chat.
Hmm.
That's from Sin City. Oh, that's from Stephen. Thank you so much. Nice to see you. Um, so have a magnificent rest of your week. And I will hope to see you soon, maybe next time you're out here in California.
Absolutely.